Hi, I'm Scott Mansell and welcome to Driver 61's definitive circuit guide to Spa-Francorchamps. In this guide we're going to analyse some real race footage, reviewing racing lines, braking references and all other aspects of putting a great lap together at Spa. Spa is a circuit with a lot of history, originally a huge 15-kilometre track at its first race back in 1922. After many configuration changes, the circuit now comprises 20 turns over 7 kilometres, including the most famous corners of Eau Rouge and Blanchimont. I'm lucky enough to have hundreds of hours of experience around Spa in a variety of cars, from racing in the Fun Cup 25 hours to testing a 1998 Tyrrell F1 car. If you'd like more detail about the circuit guide and to download the free Top Tips Spa PDF, please visit driver61.com using the link below. YouTube is a new channel for us, so please help us out by subscribing. That way you'll be informed when new circuit guides and how-to videos are released. So, without further ado, let's take a look at a complete lap of Spa before we head into the corner-by-corner detail. So here we are at the start-finish line of Spa, and first of all we're going to take a look at a full lap so you can really get a feel for the circuit. As I mentioned, I've been lucky enough to drive lots and lots of cars around this circuit, from Caterhams to Formula 1 cars, and really in anything that I've driven here, it's just been the most fun circuit in the world really. Just a fantastic track. And obviously it's also got that atmosphere that many F1 circuits now have lost, and really only comes to circuits like Spa and Monza. Just has a really authentic feel to it. So this is a lap from myself in a Radical SR3 from last year. It was a good lap. It put us on pole position for this Radical Masters Enduro series at Spa that weekend, and we had a good weekend. We went on to win all 3 races on the Sunday. So anyway, without further ado, let's take a quick look at the full lap. So here we are coming down to La Source. La Source is a very slow speed right-hand hairpin with a slight dip in it just here. You want to hook the apex up, and as soon as you get in the compression from the dip, get back on the throttle. We're running back down the hill now towards the infamous Eau Rouge sequence of corners. Flat out in cars with aero, not so flat out in cars that don't have aero. Using all the curb on the left, hugging the curb on the right, using all the curb again at the top of the hill and on the exit as well. We then have the long Kemmel straight. In fact, from La Source to the next set of corners is the longest point where the F1 drivers are flat out on the F1 tour. So we're coming up to Lacombe. Again, late braking, medium speed, right-hander. It's all a bit of a compromise through here, as it's a right, left, right again. We're aiming to maximise the speed through the right-hander as we run down to Brussels, previously known as Rivage. Downhill braking as we come into Brussels. Really patient before we get on the accelerator pedal. Again, a bit of a compromise on the exit. Slight lift as we come into the left-hander here. I made a slight mistake on this lap. I just touched the curb on the outside before turning. Before we head back down the hill again towards Pouhon, or Double Gauche as it's now called. Really fast entry here, and then trying to get back on the throttle as soon as we possibly can, allowing the car to run freely on the exit. Now coming down into the right, left, right. Again, it's all a bit of a compromise, just waiting before we get back on the throttle full now, and using all of the exit curb. Now we're bringing the car back across to Campus, hooking it up late on the apex there, using all the curb on the outside, bringing it through the next right-hander and allowing the car to run as freely as possible on the exit as we're running back uphill slightly towards Blanchimont. Blanchimont is one of the most famous corners here at Spa. Very quick and exciting left-hander. So we're letting the car run freely over to the right here, teasing it into Blanchimont, and again using all the curb on the exit. Running back down to another slow speed right-left corner, the chicane here, the bus stop, bringing it all over the curb on the right-hand side, hooking up the apex on the left and getting back on the throttle to try and maximise the exit. So that's a full lap of Spa. I hope you enjoyed it. We're now going to take a look at each corner in more detail. So the first corner at Spa is La Source, as I mentioned. It's a slow speed right-hander. In most cars it will be second gear with a heavy braking before the corner. One thing to know before you arrive at the corner is there is quite a lot of runoff on the exit, tarmac runoff, FIA spec for the Formula One. So if you really are pushing your braking, La Source is quite a good spot because you can run a few meters beyond the corner and it won't, you won't go onto the grass, you won't damage the car. So if you really want to push your braking and find the limit, this is the place, or one of the places at Spa to do it. That's quite difficult to see here, but in terms of braking references, you can see on the left-hand side here, there's a 150 meter board, and also the end of the barrier wall on the left-hand side. So you shouldn't be looking at them, but yes, you can use them as references when you're coming into La Source. Just obviously 50 meters after the 150 meter board is the 100 meter board. So depending on what car you're in, these are your braking references. So moving forwards now into the braking area of La Source, you can see the 150 meter board just at the top left screen behind the Nielsen banner there just disappearing, and the edge of the pit wall just in the top left hand side of the screen disappearing as well. In this Radical we were braking at 100 meters, but with such a light car with some aero, you can brake that light. Most cars you'll be braking earlier, and particularly if you're on a track day in a road car, you'll be braking way before the 100 meter board. So at this point you should be looking somewhere down at the apex. You can just see my head rotating here, and the apex point is just on the inside of La Source here. There's a slight dip in the circuit, so it is difficult to catch the curb, but that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the inside curb. Forget about all your braking references. They should only be looked at with your peripheral vision. Your main focus should be on the inside here at the apex. So again, we're going to move the car forwards, and you can see I'm beginning to turn the car in. You can see the apex on the inside, very close to the end of the pit wall here. But you can see the curb here. The car's just about to go down the dip. And on the inside of the apex here, you want to be using all of the curb. Spa's obviously a Formula One circuit, and it has FIA spec curbs. So they're all really flat and you can run basically all over them. It's almost like the tarmac. So you want to be getting your right hand wheel right on the inside of the curb here. So let's just move the car forwards a little bit more. You can see that I've hooked it up pretty well. It looks like I'm over the curb here, but it's just a camera angle. I'm actually perfectly on the edge of the curb. Now at this point, you need to pick your vision up and look towards the exit of the corner so you can see where when you should be getting back on the accelerator. So I'm looking somewhere around this area, maybe a little bit further up the road, so that as the car turns, I can gauge how much road is available and which line to take and how much accelerator to put it into the car. Move the car forward slightly again, and you can see that I'm coming out on the line. I get a little bit of opposite lock, but not too much, doesn't cost me much time. And the car's perfectly coming out towards the exit. Now just take note here, you can see on the left hand side here, there's a sausage curb that runs all the way along the actual curb of the track. Now this is so you can't just run onto the AstroTurf and then come back onto the track. If you do go the other side of the curb, you have to filter in back on the track all the way along at the top of the curb here, which just costs you a little bit of time. So if you are racing, then just bear that in mind, that you can't just run around the outside of people and come on and don't lose any time. For me, this is a really good idea because it makes you respect the circuit limits. So all very simple coming out of La Source. We're heading back down the hill now towards Eau Rouge, one of my favourite parts of the circuit. Just keep the car over near the pit wall here, just so you're set up best for Eau Rouge. Now already already my vision is down here through the left of Eau Rouge. Okay, we're in 5th, 6th gear, going quick in almost every car that you'll drive at Spa. As we're coming down the hill, the acceleration is obviously a bit quicker, and you need to get your vision a long way ahead of yourself. So as I said, we're coming down the hill, vision across to the curb on the left-hand side. In the Radical, Eau Rouge is flat quite easily. In other aero cars, yes, it can be quite easy to be flat. And in GT cars, it definitely isn't flat. So you'll require lift. Those people who say, yeah, I've done Eau Rouge flat. Well, sometimes it's not actually quicker to be flat. If the car's getting out of shape, then maybe it's better having a slight lift as you enter to then get flat out as you carry the speed along the next straight. Anyway, so we're bringing the car into the left of Eau Rouge. By this point, the car should be moving over to the left, and we can again use all of the curb on the left-hand side here, using all of it. It's flat. In any car, it won't disrupt the car or make it unstable. So use all of it. Already by this point, we should be looking above where I've just marked on the screen there. You can't quite see it because the camera angle isn't great, but you should be looking up at the right-hander as you're coming back up the hill of Eau Rouge. So we need to be using all the road on the left-hand side, vision back up the road, and you can see here I use all of the road almost onto the drain here, and you can see there's some grass crating on the left-hand side. So if you want to get a bit greedy in the dry, not in the rain, if you want to get a bit greedy here, you can. So we've made it through the left-hander of Eau Rouge. Now all your movements here need to be silky smooth. We're going very quick. There's a lot of compression here as you turn the car. So any sudden movements, any jerky movements will cause the car to be unstable and possibly slide, which is not what you want at this point. As we're coming up the hill here, we are looking for the apex point at the right hand. Now the curb comes out twice. If you look carefully, there's a slight kink here. Sorry, let me just remove that. There's a slight kink of the curb here, and also another one a few meters afterwards, just up here. Now you're aiming for the second one. If you reach the first kink in the curb, then you'll push out as you come over the top of Eau Rouge. So you want to wait a little bit later and take that second kink. So as we come up now, we're missing that first kink, just bringing it in to the second part of that curb that I mentioned. Now you don't want to run onto the curb here. You can run tiny little bit into the curb, the painted curb, which runs from here to here. But then as you can see, there's a serrated type curb beyond this. You don't want to run onto that at this high speed corner. Now I will say at this point, if you do make a mistake, don't try to hang on to the car. Over the top of this brow, it's all tarmac on the inside of the left-hander of Eau Rouge, so you can just run straight across it. There are some small speed bumps, but better run over those than lose the car and end up somewhere across in the barrier at the top of Eau Rouge here, which happens quite a lot. So if you do make a small mistake or the car feels a bit unstable, run straight over here, and it will be a safer route for you than heading towards the barrier. So now we're coming over the top of Eau Rouge, and we're just releasing the steering wheel, letting the car drift over to the left, over to the top of Eau Rouge, and you can use all of the curb on the left-hand side here. Again, it's basically from here to here, it's just painted tarmac, so you can use all of it. Just be careful in the rain because it might be a little bit slippery. Now you can see on the left-hand side here are the small speed bumps that I mentioned before. So if you do make a mistake, you can run over here and it won't cause your car any damage. You'll just lose a bit of time. Using all the curb on the left-hand side, your vision should be all the way along here, looking towards the exit of the corner. Now it is a little bit difficult because you're coming over a brow, so it's quite difficult to see. But just make sure that you use all the curb on the left, and then we're going to allow the car to run freely as possible all the way to the outside. Now again, if you do make a slight mistake earlier in the corner, it's possible to run beyond the curb onto this green AstroTurf. Now, obviously, if it's wet, don't touch this. You'll be sliding and then spinning across to the inside wall here. So take care of this AstroTurf on the outside in the rain and to some extent in the dry. So hopefully we've focused on carrying a lot of momentum through Eau Rouge and especially over the top of it, so we're then carrying it down the very long Kemmel Straight. So we're coming along the Kemmel Straight now. It's a good opportunity for you to check the temperatures, check your mirrors, see who's behind you. It depends what situation you're in. If you're in a race, time to check your mirrors, because if there's somebody behind you, they'll get a good tow and chances are they may be able to come past. If you're on a track day, then it's a good chance to see if there's a quicker car behind you, and if necessary, pull over to whichever side the organisers told you to let that car past. But you've got plenty of time all the way along here. So next up, we've got Lecum. It's a medium speed right, left, right, and it's all a bit of a compromise, to be honest. One of those complexes where if you take a bit out of the first corner, then you lose a bit in the second, and so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a balancing act. Anyway, as we're approaching here, you've got numerous markers on the left-hand side. Along the fence here, again, a little bit difficult to see because of the Nielsen Racing logo. But on the left-hand side here, you've got all markers that run along the fence from, I think, 250 meters all the way down to 50. So in your peripheral vision, very easy to use these as you're coming into Lecum. For me, in this radical, I was actually using the start of the curb. Now, because the car's so light and it stops so quickly, you can use this. And the curb on the outside is obviously a lot closer to the circuit than the markers that run along the wall. So it's a bit easier to use. And I was braking 10 meters or so past the start of the curb. One other thing as we enter Lecum here, again, there's tarmac on the exit, on the outside of this first right-hander. So if you do go too deep, you can just go straight on and it won't cause any damage to your car, and you're not likely to spin because it's tarmac and it's not grass. So just bear that in mind as you're approaching Lecum. So coming in, we've got our braking references sorted. We've started braking, and already we should be looking down at the apex. Okay, get your vision forwards, get looking where you want to be in a few seconds. We're looking at the apex, and it's quite a late apex as we come into the right-hander, as you'll see in a few seconds. So keeping the car all the way to the outside, you can actually take a little bit of the curb here on the left. Don't go too far because you get onto the actual curb, but this painted section here, you can just run the car onto in the dry. Keeping the car over to the left-hand side for as long as possible, and then gently bringing the car in. I've got a slight bit of oversteer there. Look, you can just see the oversteer as I turn in. Just trying to carry a bit too much speed into the corner, but it hasn't cost me any time. And we're bringing the car in towards the apex, and you can see on the inside here we've got some good markers. Now these little buttons on the inside of the corner here, they seem to come and go. I've been to Spa a few times. I went to Spa a few times last year, and at points they were there and other points they weren't. Firstly, they're good markers, so you can really pick out your apex. On the other side of things, if you do hit one, it might rip a wheel off or something. They're quite substantial, but they're there so we stay within the confines of the circuit. So for me, they're a good point. But just be careful. You don't want to be touching one of these, especially in a road car, because it will probably bend something. So we're bringing the car into the apex, which is actually the second button here as we're coming in. So you can see on the inside we've got the serrated curb from here to here. Then we've got some green concrete with the buttons on. Okay, you want to be using probably 50% of the curb to 100% of the curb on the right hand side. And we're making the apex somewhere around here. The second button is where you want to be. So bringing the car in, there's the second button. We've made the apex, we're on the curb, all's looking good, and we are moving our vision across to the second part of Lecumbe. All the way through here, you'll be feathering the throttle as well. It's not flat and lift, it's a nice feather, so the inputs into the car are nice and smooth. As you can see here, we are trying to keep the car over to the right hand side just a little bit. We're not treating it just like a single right hand corner where we'd be on the outside of the track now, on the left hand side of the track. We're hanging onto the curb on the right hand side. So we open up the left a little bit and we can carry the speed through the left and then most importantly through the next right hander. So you can see my vision is already looking, well, it's been looking across at the inside for a while. We're looking across here and we're just about to make the movement on the steering wheel to turn into the left-hander. So vision across, turning the car into the left, and you can see here there aren't any markers for the apex, but you'll know when you go in and it just feels right. Again, on the left-hand side, you don't want to use all of the curb because it's a little bit steep, but you can just grab a little bit of the curb on the left. And through here, it's important that you don't get too greedy and use all of the road on the right-hand side. What we're actually aiming for is a quick exit through the next right-hander. So you can see here, I'm probably 3/4 across towards the right-hand side of the track. Now I'm flat out in this radical, and the aim is to carry as much speed through this right-hander as possible. So I'm bringing the car back across, almost using all of the road on the left hand side here. Okay, if you can bring the car back over to the left as much as possible, that's great. So we're carrying the speed into the right, and already we've got our vision on the apex across here, so we're 2-3 seconds ahead of where the car actually is. Now we're gently bringing the car over to the right hand side, and again you can see there's some buttons on the apex of the corner here, so just be careful of those. 1, 2, 3. But again, for the purposes of this video, they're good to demonstrate where the apex is. Bringing the car in, I'm flat out in this radical, but in most GT cars it won't be flat out. So there we are. Again, we're making the second button on the apex, just using a little bit of the curb. Vision now looking towards the exit, and here you can get really greedy on the exit curb. So the vision's up here, the exit point's up here, already looking out there, and the exit curb is flat, so you can use all of it. You'll see now as I'm bringing the car towards the outside of the track, we're running on all of the curb. Okay, just legal here. And again, you can see that the curb's flat up until this point. And actually, when you're racing in Europe, it's different to the UK rules where only 2 wheels have to be within the white lines. So these 2 wheels, the front and the rear right, have to be inside this white line. In the UK, it's a little bit different, as I'm sure most of you know. Anyway, so we can use all the curb and beyond as long as 2 wheels are within the white line. You'll notice beyond the curb here, we have some green concrete, which you can run on in the dry. In the wet, I would probably stay off it as it will be slippery. And then even further beyond this, if you do make a mistake and push out a little bit wide, we have some AstroTurf, which, I mean, it's going to cost you a bit of time in the dry. Don't run on it in the rain, as again, you'll likely spin and end up in this wall. I've seen numerous cars across here. So we are coming out of Lecumbe, bringing the car back onto the track. Now, it's quite important to bring the car back onto the track before the curb ends, because as you can see on the left-hand side here, the gravel trap starts about here. It's important at this point, you're just bringing the car back onto the circuit. There's some grass grating that you can run on here, which isn't too much of a problem, but ideally get the car back onto the circuit. Now we're running down to Brussels, previously known as Rivage. It's downhill, as you can notice, so just be aware of the rear of the car. It might become a little bit light as you're coming down the hill. Again, on the left-hand side, there's a marker. Sven's Nilsson logo is really getting in the way here of this tutorial, so I'm sorry. But on the left-hand side here, yes, you can see there's a marker. I think that one's 150. But as we come down, you'll see that I was actually using the curb. Yes, so this one is, oh no, it's actually 100. So in the Radical, we were braking just beyond this. In many GT cars, because you'll be going a bit quicker and their car's heavier, you'll be braking a little bit before this. But just use these as references in your peripheral vision, okay? You need to have your vision well ahead of yourself. You shouldn't be staring at the braking point. And as I've mentioned in other tutorials, if you're on a track day where they put cones out, don't stare at the braking and turning cones, okay? If you're staring at the braking and turning cones, you're going to mess your racing line up. You should only use the apex cones on track days. Your vision needs to be ahead of where the car is. That way, driving almost slows down and it's a lot easier to pick out your racing line and know how much speed to carry into the corner and how much speed you can carry back out. Anyway, we're heading back down to Rivage, keeping the car over to the left-hand side. If you're in a really light car like the Radical, you can see that I'm still flat out on the accelerator here. And I'll be using the start of the entry curb on the left hand side here as a braking reference. So I'm bringing the car in, I'm still not on the brakes, and here there's a number of different lines you can take. It depends on the car. Some people come directly across to the inside of Brussels, some people come down here. Now you don't want to take the traditional kind of line that you'll see on a board at a driving experience day where they'll tell you to go around the outside and then come make the apex right at the end. My advice would be to V the corner off a little bit so you're coming somewhere in the middle of the track across here, slowing the car down, then at the midpoint of the corner the car's pushing out slightly as you'll see in a few seconds, and then just tucking in at the end of the corner to make the apex before you get back on the throttle down towards the next left. One more thing to mention on the brakes down here. As you can see, all of this section on the outside is tarmac again. So you can run a few meters deep and just run around the outside of the tarmac. It's always good to have that in the back of your mind so you really know that you can push on the brakes. So heading into Rivage here, you can see I'm kind of taking that central line at the corner entry. I'm not making an apex initially, and I'm not going around the outside. My vision's down at the apex on the inside here, and continually looking all the way around the corner that far ahead of myself. Bringing the car just off the apex here, and then I'm just lifting to get the car to rotate slightly mid-corner, tucking the front of the car in towards the apex, and again you can see on the inside here we've got the curb and we've got the little buttons again, 2 buttons, the curb and some green concrete. Now you can just tuck the car slightly into the curb, but don't use too much as it will unsettle the car. So I've just got the car rotated, bringing it into the apex, and we're back on the throttle there. And again, on the exit here of Brussels, it's a bit of a compromise. You don't want to use all of the road on the outside, because then you won't be able to get the car back across to the right hand side here. If you're running too far over to the left, you won't be able to get all the way back across here. Or if you do, you'll be pointing completely away from the next left-hander. And the next left-hander is much more important than this corner, as it carries your speed down the next straight and into Pouhon, or double gauche as it's now called. So I've managed to get the car back all the way across to the right-hand side. And here you can actually see I do run onto the curb. I've actually been too efficient. I've got the car back over to the right-hand side. And in a few moments, you'll see that that cost me a little bit of time. So I turn the car into this next left, which doesn't have a name. My vision is all the way down here at the apex. Okay, we're carrying as much speed through here. It's a medium high speed corner. In most cars it will require a bit of a soft brake or just a lift in this radical, as you can see on this qualifying lap. So we've got our vision across at the apex there, bringing the car in, and you can see my hands, I grab a load of oversteer because I turned in on the curb. So this isn't the perfect line, I'll be honest with you, but you can see that mistakes do happen. On this particular lap, I looked at the data, this cost me a tenth and a half or so on the entry here, just because I couldn't get the car into the apex. So we've pushed the car a little bit too wide, almost too wide, so I can't show you where the actual apex is, but we can just fit it into the screen here. So the actual apex is around here, and you don't want to use too much of the curb here because it will disrupt the car again. Again, on the outside, you'll notice there's a load of tarmac for the FIA spec. So if you do go in a bit deep, then you can run onto this. However, the barrier here comes back towards the circuit as you're exiting, so you're more likely to touch the barrier down here. Anyway, so you've hooked it up on the apex, better than me, hopefully. And we're back on the gas, and here again on the exit of this left-hander you can use so much curb. So we've got our vision all the way down the track, we're using all the curb on the right hand side, and as you can see it's smooth, it's tarmac that's been painted. Okay, on the outside of the curb you've got some more AstroTurf, which you can run on in the dry just a little bit. I mean, I try not to make a habit out of it because it just gives the car a little bit of push as you're coming out the corner. Just use all the curb that you can. In the wet, obviously, don't touch the AstroTurf because the risk is, again, that you'll spin and head towards the inside barrier here. And again, like coming out of Lecombe, you need to get the car back onto the tarmac within the white lines before this area down here because the grass comes in rather quickly. So we're gently bringing the car back onto the track. You can see we missed those two little bollards on the outside just here and here. Now the exit of this left hander is quite important because we've got a medium length or short medium length straight after it. However, we've got Pouhon or double left coming up, which is a really quick corner, especially if you're in a car that has aero. Heading down the next straight, carrying as much speed as possible. Now it's really important because we're going so quick, like we were at Eau Rouge, to get your vision as far ahead of yourself as possible. So you can just see, again behind the Nielsen logo, the start of the curb for the double left here. Now this is something, because you're going so quickly and because there aren't many references for the apex here, it's just something that you've got to get into the flow of, and it will come to you after you've done quite a few laps around Spa. You might get it a little bit wrong your first few laps, but it will come to you as long as your vision is a long way ahead of yourself and you're not just focused down here. So if you need to brake for Pouhon, which you will do in GT cars, in road cars, track day cars, you'll have to slow down. Anything without aero, basically, you'll have to brake. There's quite a few references. You've got the different colours of barrier on the left-hand side here. You've got the orange Marshall markings on the right-hand side of the barrier here, and you've got the start of the curb here. Now, if you're getting down towards the start of the curb, which you might do in something like a Caterham R300, you'll be going quite quick into the double left. And again, don't stare at these braking references, okay? You need to just use them in your peripheral vision. Again, on the outside of the double left, you've got a load of tarmac. So if you do make a mistake, don't fight the car too much, whereby you might spin and head towards a barrier on the inside. Just let the car push out a little bit and obviously ease off the gas, and you'll just have to run around the outside of the corner. But at least you won't be in the barrier. So coming down to Pouhon, you can see it's flat in 5th gear in this radical. We are doing, 213 kilometers an hour. Really, really quick. Didn't quite manage to get it flat out in this car. You can see I turn in flat, get a little bit of oversteer, and then just have a slight lift. Didn't have the balls to do it flat out. And again, it's one of those corners where, yes, I probably could have done it flat out, but it would have ended up being a bit scruffy and been slower than having a slight lift. So again, you can see my head is turned. We're looking towards the inside of the corner here because we are going very, very quick. Don't use any of the curb on the inside of Pouhon here. You just want the car to run nicely around the white line on the inside here. Now at this point, we're looking all the way around the corner, around here, looking towards the first exit of Pouhon. Now, double left, it's called, or Pouhon. So it has 2 apexes. So this is the first apex. We're going to let the car push towards the outside of the circuit, as you'll see in a few moments. As we're coming through, we're going to try and get back on the throttle as soon as possible. You can see that I'm flat out now again on the throttle, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. We're letting the car push out. Now here, you can use all the curb on the outside in the dry. However, you do not want to run onto the AstroTurf. Because the car's loaded up so much, if you do go onto the AstroTurf, you'll run wide. The car will just start pushing, it'll start understeering, and you won't be able to bring the car back onto the track. So keep the car just on the curb, do not run on the AstroTurf. And again, out here you can see where all that tarmac is. So if you do have a moment on the entry to the double left, just let the car run out here, ease off the accelerator, but keeping the car stable, and run around the outside of the corner. Yes, you'll have destroyed the lap, but again, as I said, you won't be in the barrier. So already we're looking around to the second part of Pouhon, bringing the car into the second apex on the left-hand side, as you can see just here. So we should have our vision around here. And again, we can just run along the white line here. By this point, in most cars, you'll be wanting to at least be bringing the throttle back in and start to accelerate through the double left. As you can see here in the radical, I'm flat out already, but it's light and doesn't have that much power. We've got our vision looking all the way down towards the exit curb here, and by this point you should have everything under control, and the car should be nicely pushing out towards the exit. Again, using all of the curb, it's completely flat, keeping the car within the legal limits and trying not to run onto the AstroTurf. So now we have a short straight running down towards Fagnes. There's a few braking references on the left-hand side. Let me just wind it back a bit. So you can see here we've got a few markings on the barrier on the left-hand side. And you also have the start of the entry curb on the left-hand side. Now you'll only be able to use that if you're in a single-seater or a radical, for example. Now you can use it and use it 30 meters before. It just gives you that slight reference. And again, we're only using it in our peripheral, but it's worth having a quick look when you're all the way back here. So coming down to the right-hander, it's medium speed, it's 4th gear just about in this radical. On the left-hand side here is the entry curb that I mentioned before. So you can see just down here on the throttle, I'm still flat out. But in most cars, you'll be braking way before this point. So here you can see my head is already turned and we're looking across towards the apex on the inside. When you look this far ahead, it makes driving so much easier. You give yourself so much more time to process how quickly you can enter the corner, how much speed you can take in, the racing line, and so on and so forth. So really, really concentrate on looking way ahead of yourself like we are in this video. So we're getting our braking done, going down a few gears, keeping our eyes towards the apex, gently bringing the car in here. And again, you can see that there's some tarmac on the outside. So if you do make a mistake, you can run wide and it's not going to cost you the world. We're gently bringing the car towards the inside of the corner here. As I mentioned, it's quite a long entry as you enter this right-hander. And again, we've got the 3 bumps. we've got a curb with a slight gradient on it, so you don't want to take too much, but you can take a little bit. And we're bringing the car in towards the second and third button, and the thing to look out for is the end of this green concrete on the inside. So let me just take it back a little bit so you can see. So bringing the car in towards that third button and the end of the green concrete. Again, like Lacombe, this is a bit of a compromise through the right-hander so you can maximize the speed through the left. So we're on the inside, we're still hanging onto the curb for as long as possible. You can see that I've just ridden up the curb there, and actually we're hanging on to the apex curb almost until the end of the yellow and red curb here. So already you can see that at this point my vision's just shifting across, turning my head. Looking through the corner at this point. So they bring the car into the corner, and now they don't look far enough ahead, and they accelerate too soon. Get on the gas, the car pushes wide, probably a little bit wider than this. They run onto the AstroTurf, they lift the accelerator, and this obviously transfers all of the weight onto the front of the car, reduces the grip at the rear of the car, and they end up sliding and crashing to the inside wall here, which really isn't that far away on the inside of the circuit. Anyway, hopefully we won't do that, and you've got a good exit through this left. Now we're going to head down to Stavelot, or Campus as it's now called. Now we need to make sure that we bring the car all the way back across to the left-hand side here. So we need to get the car back across and in a straight line before we enter Campus on the right now. In the Radical, it was a really important corner, and in a lot of other racing cars actually, it's really important because the right-hander following Campus is just about flat out. So it means that all the speed that you carry through Campus, you're carrying for a long time, all the way down the back straight towards Blanchimont. So bringing the car all the way over to the left-hand side before we get to Campus, running it just up to the white line. And at this point, let me just rewind it a little bit. You can see there's a few references on the left-hand side, just to the left of the Nielsen logo. You can see here there's a change in colour for the tyre barriers. That's a good thing to use in your peripheral. Or if you're in a light aero car, you can use the start of the entry curb all the way down here. You can see we're beginning to get on the brakes. Already my vision's shifted across and we're looking towards the inside of the corner. You can see my head's turned already. So we're looking across here. Getting all the braking done, down a couple of gears. This is a medium speed right-hander with third gear in this Radical. And again on the inside you can see you've got 3 buttons. We're going to make the apex at the second and third button. And again, we're looking to come to the inside of the corner about where the end of the concrete is and the grass crating starts. As I mentioned, you really need to maximize the exit of campus here because you'll be carrying the accelerator along the next straight for quite a long time. So late apex here, getting on the throttle as soon as possible, trying to keep the car all in shape and using as much road on the outside to open up campus as much as possible. Here you don't want to get on the AstroTurf too much, especially in a high-powered car, because you don't want to induce any wheel spin. Using all the road on the outside here. Now, in a lot of racing cars, this next right-hander is flat. In track day cars, it will be really close. So just take care depending on which type of car you're in. Again, we've got our vision a long way forwards. On the inside of this right-hander, you've got the 3 buttons again, and we are looking out for the second and the third button on the inside of the corner here. Once you've got here, even if you're in a car with lots of power and not much grip, you should be beginning to accelerate out of the right-hander as we want to carry that speed all the way down the next straight. On the outside of this right-hander, you can see there's a lot of tarmac on the outside, so if you do happen to understeer wide, just run over it. You're going to have to lift off a bit to bring the car back onto the circuit, but you won't lose too much time, and more importantly, you won't go off, as I've mentioned numerous times now. All of this back stretch that has been running down to Blanchimont is all quite open. The idea is just to keep the car as smooth as we possibly can as we're running back down towards Blanchimont. Bringing the car over to the right-hand side. Now at this point, in the radical, this left-hander, or the first part of Blanchimont, is really easy. You can almost go on any line. In a quicker car with less grip, you do have to be a bit more careful. So you might take more of a traditional racing line where you're bringing the car towards the inside and then letting the car push towards the outside before Blanchimont. Now it's just important that as you enter Blanchimont, we're getting the car settled, we're set, because it's a really quick corner. In a lot of cars, it's flat out, but only just. In GT cars and some track day cars, no, it won't be. You'll have to brake. But in a lot of racing cars, yes, it can be. Now, on the entry to Blanchimont, they've taken away the grass on the outside, and they've actually made it a bit easier than it ever used to be, because you can run onto this green part of the circuit. Now, if you're on a track day, I don't advise doing that. That's a bit silly. What's the point in trying to carry another couple of miles an hour through Blanchimont? However, if you are racing, then yes, you can run onto this green strip. At some point around here, the concrete takes a bit of a camber and it comes down. So you don't want to head too far onto the green part of this concrete, because you'll fall off the camber and you actually will struggle to turn the car into Blanchimont. But you can take 30, 40, maybe 50 centimeters of the green part of the track, and it will open up the entry to Blanchimont and make it a bit easier than it ever was. For me, I wish I would actually put the grass back there, because making these circuits too sanitized is a little bit boring, if I'm honest. Anyway, Blanchimont's really quick, as I've mentioned. 6th gear in this radical, flat out, quite easy to be honest, but because it's so quick, you should be looking as far forwards as possible. Somewhere through this Nielsen logo, I'm going to have to send him an invoice because he's getting a lot of advertising through this through this video. Anyway, we're looking a long way ahead of ourselves through the Nielsen logo at the apex of Blanchimont. Bringing the car in very gently, it's very quick, so all the movements you make, even if you're braking as you're coming in, even with the steering, need to be silky, silky smooth. We're not dabbing the brakes if we're in a GT car through Blanchimont. We're brushing them very, very gently. We don't want to destabilize the car too much. And it's the same if you're braking into Eau Rouge, if you're braking into the double left. When you're going quick and the car doesn't need to be slowed down that much, we don't need to press the brakes really, really hard. We'll just destabilize everything way too much. So if you do have to brake, just a gentle brush just to ease the car into the corner. Keeping our vision a long way ahead of ourselves. You don't want to take any of the curb here at Blanchimont. I haven't quite made the apex here. Wasn't necessary in the radical because it isn't quite quick enough in a straight line, and it's got lots of aero. Anyway, we're picking our vision up now, looking towards the outside of Blanchimont. As I mentioned before, if you do make a mistake, such as at double left and Eau Rouge, you can let the car run wide. And again, if you're making a mistake or you get a load of oversteer at some point here, just correct it slightly, but start to ease off and just run around the outside. It's a little bit more difficult here at Blanchimont because of the way the barrier comes back in, but you're better off just running a little bit wide here than heading towards the inside barrier. So you can use all of the curb on the exit of Blanchimont as you can at most curbs around here at Spa. It's fairly flat and there's a little bit of AstroTurf beyond it. Ideally you want to use all of the curb here. If you do make a mistake, you can run onto the AstroTurf, but obviously be really, really careful in the rain and do not run on the AstroTurf. So now we're on the run down to the final sequence of corners, the chicane. Very important sequence of corners because you need to get a good exit as you come out, so you carry the speed along the next straight, which is the start and finish straight. And important because it's a heavy braking zone, so it's a good overtaking area. But also you need to be as late on those brakes as you possibly can. So we're heading down, we're keeping the car over to the right hand side of the track just until we get to this curb on the right hand side here. Then we're letting the car push gently towards the outside. And you can see on the left here, we have some markers that run along the fence, much like the run down to Lecum. I think they're 150, 150. Actually, no, they're more than that. They're 250, 150, something like this. Anyway, you'll find the references useful. I was using them in this radical, but again, only use them in your peripheral and keep your focus on the apex of the upcoming corner. So head down, we're gently letting the car run to the outside. It's important here that the car's in a straight line before you get on the brakes. If you have any steering angle in it, because it's a heavy braking zone, you'll destabilize the car. So get the car in a straight line before you brake, and that's why I haven't been able to make the car go directly parallel with the, or all the way across to the white line. We're actually better off running back down and running diagonally slightly across the braking area here towards the outside of the track. You'll also see, well, it's quite difficult to see here, but there's a slight bump here. So if your car is quite late braking as this radical is, you'll want to brake just before, just after this bump, as it can again destabilize the car. So we're hard on the brakes and changing down a few gears. In the radical, it's second. You can see now that we are parallel with the white line on the left hand side. My vision is already at the inside of the chicane here. We're looking across already, so we know how much speed we can take into the corner, when we can release the brakes, when we should start turning, and so on and so forth. So we're bringing the car down, keeping it over to the left for as long as possible. And again, it's one of those corners where we need to compromise the first part so that we maximize the exit speed on the way onto the next straight. Just before we turn in here, you can see that straight ahead of us, there's a lot of tarmac. So again, if you do push your braking and go deep by 5 or 10 meters, it's no problem. You've just got to turn the car around and get back onto the circuit. So obviously just be careful when you do rejoin the track. So bringing the car down into the apex, you can see my head's properly turned here. And again, it's quite a late apex as we're bringing the car onto the curb. You can use all of the curb up to here, okay? On the inside, much like at Donington and Snetterton and lots of other circuits now across Europe and the world, actually, there's a sausage curb on the inside. So you don't want to run onto this, it will destabilize the car too much, but you can use all of this, this red and yellow curb. And you can see here how late we are making the apex. And the idea here is that we're keeping the car over to the right hand side for as long as possible before we then go into the left. We're trying to open up the left as much as we can, which enables us to get on the accelerator as soon as possible and then carry the speed down the next straight. You'll be much, much better off restricting this part of the corner and maximizing your exit than carrying loads of speed through this right-hander and then coming in across here and making the left really, really tight, because then you won't be able to get on the accelerator as soon. So here you can see that my vision has shifted across before I turn. We're already looking at this next left-hander, looking across at the curb on the inside, and the curb's set up the same as the right-hander. You've got the curb, and then you've got the sausage curb on the inside. So don't run on the sausage curb. Here, to get the car to turn to the left, I was just having a slight lift so that we transfer some of the weight to the front of the car and it turns a bit easier. Bringing the car across to the inside of the left-hander here. Now, in the radical, if I was running on the curb on the left here, it would spin the inside wheel up. So I wasn't using the curb to maximize the exit. In a lot of cars, you want to use as much as this curb on the left-hand side as possible. At this point, we're already looking towards the outside of the corner. We're trying to get on the throttle as soon as possible, so we're carrying the speed down the start-finish straight. So you can see here, I just get a little bit of oversteer at this point. That's perfect, and we are letting the car push all the way onto the curb to maximize the width of the circuit so we can have got on the throttle as soon as possible. Now here again, as all the curbs are at Spa, you've got the curb, which you can run onto, then you've got a bit of AstroTurf. Yes, you can run on the AstroTurf a little bit, but because it's a high traction area, or you're trying to get the accelerator on in probably second gear, you'll probably not want to run on the AstroTurf, because if you do, you may induce some wheel spin and it'll cost you a bit of acceleration. So nice clean exit coming out of the chicane. And then it's quite simple, as we're just pushing up the gears, coming down to the start-finish straight. Now, it's only a tiny little thing, but if you're on a qualifying lap, just keep the car over to the right-hand side here, because you knock off a few meters and it'll save you a few hundredths or a few thousandths of a second on your quali lap. And then we have one complete lap of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've learned a few things. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below and I'll get back to you. As I mentioned, this is a new channel for us, so if you like this video, please help us by sharing and subscribing. Don't forget to visit the Driver61 website for more detail and to download the Top Tips PDF, as well as more circuit guides and driving technique articles. The link's coming up. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.